Hello everybody, welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about my crawler theory, how I build trucks, and what I think makes them perform well. And tonight I've got an RB1 that's essentially a low CG chassis. It sits very low, it's on a small tire. They're similar setups. The RB1 has brass in the wheels. This one does not, but it has the Mofo RC portals, brass portals, and I really like those because they get the ground clearance without losing the center of gravity, and they're front and back, and they have similar suspensions. This is another small tire car because you'll remember a video I did a while back that said big tires are dead to me, and that's just because they give up so much center of gravity that I feel like they don't perform well. But tonight we're going to compare these two and just do a little bit of fun driving, and they couldn't be more different. One's a low CG car and one is a high ground clearance car. I feel like they both have a good center of gravity, but you can see that the RB1 has a much narrower track. It also sits quite a bit lower, but you can see I easily put my hand under this with space. Under this one, my finger already touches it before it even gets in there. On this side, it's quite a bit different. You can see that. And on this side, I just have a little bit of wiggle room before that hits the chassis. So this one sits much higher. I haven't bothered to measure the height differences on them, but when you view it from the side, it is pretty significant. This one sits much higher. The Mofo version 4 portal, it sits a lot higher. We'll talk now about why I'm not necessarily a fan of wider cars, but let's first talk about normal diff clearances. On the left here, we have a small tire truck, and it just has this diff clearance, and it's basically from the bottom of the tire to the bottom of the diff is your diff clearance. And if you are on a flat plane, it doesn't matter. If a rock comes up or an obstacle, you just drive past it, it can go through here. If you have a big tire car, the only real benefit here is it puts this up just a little bit higher because the radius between the axle and the ground is slightly longer because it's a larger tire. What portals do, this is for new people. If you're a seasoned crawler, you already know this stuff, but this is for new people. Portal axles have a set of gears within the wheel that basically is a gear here that runs a gear here, and then it goes into the drive shaft. And that allows the drive shaft to not go through the center, but more through the top. And this one would be through the center. And if I line up the pointer with the other drive shaft, you can see how much more ground clearance you have. Now, if you raise up the chassis by putting it on portals, and it will, your center of gravity, I'm sorry, I hit the camera, is much higher than it is on the non-portal rig. Mofo RC ones give it a 25% gear reduction and a 25% increase in torque, which I really like. And then you can run a faster motor to make up for it if you need to. But you can see now the three different centers of gravity, and that's significant because as you start crawling, that matters a lot. So this is one of the things that I like. So another thing that I like to do is I'll use a small tire, and that drops the diff back down to here, because with the smaller tire, I don't know if you really get that, but with the smaller tire, you get rid of that extra distance between the axle shaft and the I should say the drive axle and the bottom of the tire. So this is why I like small tires with a portal axle. You get the extra ground clearance, but you don't have the CG up as high. The only downside I can really think of is it will never have a CG as low as a straight axle rig, and that's okay. You can get a lot of that back though by using a low center of gravity chassis where the shocks mount higher and let the chassis sit lower. We'll move on to wide versus narrow. A narrow wheelbase rig can sit on top of a hill. Suppose you're climbing over a domed obstacle. It'll sit on top of that happily, and you still have ground clearance. I'll show you what happens when you extend the wheels outward. Now I've gone to a little bit of an extreme here, but this is to show you what happens. If you extend the wheels far enough out, the diff will touch and the wheels won't even touch at all. And I've extended that just for the purposes of the video so you can understand what I'm trying to portray here. And this happens faster than you'd think on a course. If you're crawling over a domed obstacle and you're just barely scraping it with a narrow wheel track car, a stock one, and then you extend the wheelbase wider, you're immediately going to drag the diff and probably get hung up. Now I'm going to show you what a portal will do. We're still going with the same exaggeratedly wide wheel track, but with a portal axle, the axle's center shaft does not go through the center of the tire. It goes closer to the top of the tire than the middle, and that's why portals are great, because they give you the ground clearance that you didn't have before, and you can see that here sort of. Again, I exaggerated in the pictures, but you can see here that axle, the drive axle, the housing actually goes about a third of the way up from the middle, higher than center. And this one, the axle goes immediately through the center of the tire. So that is why these two rigs can be so different and yet both perform well on the course. Let's real quick talk about scrub radius as well. This is the truck, this is the front axle, this is the rear axle, and as you know, the rear axle is just comes straight out of the diff, goes out to the tire. Now the front axle has a pivot point for the steering arm, and the steering has an arc that it can proceed through. And one of the cool things about having, this is the stock width, we're going to say, and this out here is the extended wheelbase. A stock width car has a small scrub radius, and therefore it has a relatively unchanged, how should we call it, wheelbase front to back. The extended wheelbase cars, not only do they have a little bit higher articulation because of the longer arm, but they also have a longer scrub radius, because for every degree of angle change, you take that wheel farther forward than it would be on a standard wheelbase rig. So if you measure this distance between the tire and the axle, it's that much. If you measure, the front and back axle, the tire to the back axle here is quite a bit longer. So you can actually reach with a wider truck than you can with a shorter one. Suppose you need to get over an obstacle, and being able to reach forward with that longer scrub radius sometimes can really help you. This is the rock slide climb, and I keep it because it's really hard. It has a lot of gaps in it. It's really fairly steep. It has a peak at the top that makes it difficult to get over for the differential. This rock here is domed almost exactly like I showed you in the drawing earlier. So it's a really good example of why a higher ground clearance car works well if you have portal axles, and it's also why a narrow car works good on standard axles, because you don't have that obstacle protruding up between the tires into the structure of the vehicle. I'll start with the Mofo version 4 portal truck, and no guarantee how well this is going to go. I tried it in practice and it went right up, but we'll see what it does here. Give it a shot here. I know if I stayed to the left on this one, it tends to work a little better. But the problem is, it doesn't want to stay left. I'll try to shoot it up there, just to get it past the hang-up spot. Now this one is where it tends to want to slide a little bit. And as long as I keep that left front from going over the peak, it'll be okay. This is where a little bit of articulation is good. This side really had no severe problems getting up there because it has a lot of ground clearance and it made it over the final peak very easily. It's also very stable because it's wide, and that's the main reason that people go with a wider wheelbase is for stability. And that's great. You might want to go for ground clearance if you don't have it depends on the course you want to drive on. If it's relatively flat, go with a big tire, because then you get the portal axle plus the height of the bigger tire, and you're going to get better ground clearance. If you have steep climbs like this, the portal axle will get you a wider wheelbase, but a smaller tire will help bring the center of gravity down. It won't be as low as a straight axle truck, but it'll be close. Now the other truck has Patagonias on it. This one has pit bulls, and I did a tire test earlier, and they were pretty equivalent, really. The pit bulls are a little bit stiffer, and in my test, the Patagonias beat them by 1 point. And I may at some point convert this over to Patagonias, because I just feel like they're a little bit grippier. They're close, but it's not quite the same. And this is kind of a shootout between my two trucks that are probably my most capable too. And as you can see, it's still difficult. See if I can get up there this time without dumping it. I think if I get that left wheel up, hooked over the top, I can make it. Well, I didn't. We'll give it one more quick shot. If it doesn't make it, we're going to move on. Since the wall is there, I'm going to use it as if it was a cliff face. Well, let's score one for the Mofo version 4 portal. This is one of my favorite climbs that I've ever built, and I really like it because this is actually narrower than the truck is. I mean, the wheel's out there, and the trick is to climb up it sideways, and I just think it's a cool climb. So we'll try each one tonight and see how they do. The articulation and ground clearance really helps it out on this climb. Another thing that's good for it is coming up here. Actually, I'm hitting the front. It's so wide that I was scratching that axle housing on the rock. We'll just get this to come up over the top. advantage of that extra articulation. Not sure how this is going to go. There we go. Now I'm going to get that left front, or sorry, the right front digging in, and I want the back of the sidewall on that right front to catch that edge. So then it will help pull itself down. There we go. The front side climbs it up, the back side pulls it back towards the rock. And that's when you're running on the sidewalls. A few more backups than I wanted, but it's a successful run. Now the RB1 gets a shot. Same course. It's narrower, so I can go around the rocks that I couldn't go around before. Maybe I should have timed these, but I didn't. I want to catch this back side of the right front tire. I'll bring the camera over just to show you what I'm doing. And I want to catch that sidewall, the back side of it, on the rock face, because if I can get that thing to grip on the rock, it'll pull the nose down because the tire on the back side is coming up. Now if I want the car to raise, I can run more on the front of the tire. But if I want to pull the truck in, then I can run on the back side. I've got a little bit of a dip issue on the back happening. And I'm just going to try to pull it up there. See what happens. Well, that's one failed attempt for the RB1. And normally I would consider this one of my, actually my most capable rig, but maybe it's not. It's kind of hanging up in the same spot where it was before. And right here, this is a ground clearance issue. I've hit the frame. And that's a small tire thing, but portal axles would have got that the skid plate up a little bit higher. So the skid plate right now is a limiting factor in how well this is going for it. I'll change the camera angle here just a little bit. Might get a better view as I try to take this up over the top for it. I'll grab the correct controller. And it makes it. In this test, I'm going to have to score 1 for the Mofo version 4 again. I hadn't expected that because I feel like these are two very closely capable rigs, even though they're vastly different in the way they get there. Next run we're going to do is the cave climb, and I like this one. It's a fairly new section of my course, and it goes a bit taller. I haven't painted that box yet gray, but I will eventually, just so it looks like the rest of the course. but it's still kind of under construction. But we'll do the cave climb, and what I like about this is when you climb, you actually have to carry a wheel, the right rear, over this gap, and it just looks cool. And I'll see which truck can do the best one tonight. We'll start off with the version 4 portal truck. All of this is by Mofo RC. See, you can see right here that that extra long wheelbase made it easy, and if I reach forward, it actually extends the wheelbase. See how much farther forward that tire is once I rotate it out, and that helps a lot because I was able to reach for the top of this rock and hold it up there no problem. Okay, now this is a problem here. I've dropped the rear tire into the cave, and when you drop a tire, sometimes you're done. I'm going to see if I can't pull it out anyway, though. I've got a fairly another great thing about this is when you're running underdrive on the rear or overdrive on the front, it tends to clamp onto a rock the same way you would grip a basketball. It just pulls it in. So I'd say the Mofo did a really nice job going up that one right there, and it's still doing a nice job coming up the top up there. Now I have noticed that with the Mofo 20% underdrive, I was able to get a lot better turning radius than I've expected. With the Trio 14% overdrive on the front, I didn't really notice a turning radius difference. But when you have 20% underdrive on the rear, it did make quite a bit of difference for this truck. I'm not saying it will on all of them, but for this one, it really helped. Slide it over. I'll reach over the top using that scrub radius. And this thing is making it look easy. Now I'm going to put that right rear, I'll zoom in on that a little bit, right on the obstacle, and it's going to be essentially an obstacle dig to help me get around that corner. There we go. That made it look easy. Another great thing about the extra long wheelbase is, I'll zoom this out a little bit, it helps it descend a lot better than a short wheelbase because it tends to keep the center of gravity a bit lower and in proportion to where the axles are. It just keeps it inside of its limits. Yeah, I'm starting to think this is my most capable rig, at least tonight. I might think something different in a day, but this used to be the Alpha 5. I'm going to try the same climb with the shorter wheelbase car. It once again dropped a wheel, but it didn't seem to be an issue. Uh-oh, it is an issue. I need to take it a little bit more over the, shoot. Teeter-totter it down. It's not going to go well. I think we need to get the left rear a little bit farther left. And that back tire is so far in the air. That's why this is a cool climb, because you're doing a 3-point climb all the way up until that rear tire has something to get a hold of. And you don't want it to get a hold of something too early, but like right there, it let the left rear drop, and that's where we messed up the first time. Anytime you get a rear tire dropping and it lets the center of gravity pivot outside of what it can do, you're in bad shape, and it'll just tip over. This time it's going well. Zoom in on that again. A little tighter shot for you. Now, I felt like this did the top section a lot easier, and it can easily do the downhill. Not even worried about that part. Of course, I could still screw it up. My fault driving it poorly, but I'll try not to do that. And you see how it dropped that right rear? That's why I have that one kinetic shock, because I can get it to reach down, and it doesn't affect its climbing performance on that one corner. That's the only place on these SCX 24s that I will put a telescoping shock. This is kind of one of the newer areas of my course, and I like it because it's kind of a peak run, and you start on this end and it's pretty straight up and down, and you come across, there's a crossover you can do, right to left, left to right there, and there's one that is right through here, those rocks. And next thing I'm going to do is take the trucks, and try to run them up over this way. And so far, the only one that has made it this way is the RB1. I have nothing else that has been able to do the transition over this yet but that truck. So I'll try both of them tonight, and we'll see what happens. We're going to change it up a little bit and run the RB1 over this particular obstacle first. And just because you don't have a massive rock landscaping project in your basement doesn't mean you can't throw 4 or 5 rocks together and have a decent place to run. And it makes it. We'll try that same run with the Mofo version 4. We'll see if the wide track long wheelbase is good for this obstacle or not so good. I'm having to come up a little bit farther to the left than I wanted to, but I'm going to try to give it the same type of run that I gave the other truck. Well, how about that? Mofo version 4 portal crushes it. This time we're going to run the length of it. So you basically go up against a straight, nearly straight up and down wall here. Well, that has a little bit of an angle, not too much, but a little bit, over a peak with a ridge on it right there, and then a gap. And I'm gonna have to pick which tire I want to put on that ridge, because this is meant to hang up the diffs. Then once you get to this rock, it's very smooth and has a big drop off here that you drop tires into. So it's a fun one to do, just because it's hard. Start off with the version 4. That extra long wheelbase with the ability to reach forward has already put that left rear over the top. I just need to swing the tail of it to the right, get over the top, and look at this articulation. That is just fantastic. That really helps it here, because it's keeping a wheel on the ground. And keep in mind, this is the counter-rotating drive shaft. So the RB1 has the telescoping shock on the other side, so it doesn't help it. Not here anyway. I'll just try to pull this over. It's probably going to be bad. And it's not. It had enough center of gravity from those brass portals to just take it right over the top. Now I'm going to move in here just to show you the diff is diffed out on the rock there. I've got the tires barely holding anything, and the front tires are in holes on this one, and it's pretty wide. So a little bit of a problem there, but we'll see what we can do. I think it's even hitting the control or the suspension links on the rock there. I'll go with a little bit of a side shot, but I think it still has a good chance of getting over the top. I need to move it a little bit this way. Kinetic shock, let it reach down without tipping it over. See if I can't get it straightened out to make the corner here. Very nice. So that went pretty well for it, I think. It's a difficult run. We'll try the RB1. This is a shorter wheelbase truck. It's actually a buggy, shorter wheelbase buggy, and it's narrower. But as you can see, it's not really having a problem there. Just want to make sure that I keep my center of gravity good, so that I don't lose it on the side here. The other truck did pretty well. Move this over for a better angle at it. Just want to make sure that I have something for that right front to grab onto when it comes over the top. And because I have a much narrower wheel track here, I was able to just barely skim that diff. It didn't hang up like the wider one did. just need to be able to make the turn here at the end, go straight through. And I have to give this obstacle to the RB1 because it was just a lot easier at the end. The walls area here is one of my favorite parts of the course. It's been here probably just about longer than anything else. That extra ground clearance just made that look easy. That was probably the easiest time I've ever had getting through that. And we'll finish this video up with RB1. Trying the same thing. Little ground clearance issue there, not too bad. More driver error, getting it up in the wrong place. RB1 also has no problem. Well, I think the trucks are pretty evenly matched. I have to give the edge though to the Mofo version 4 portal truck tonight. It just did a little bit better. That ground clearance really helped it out in several areas. The extra reach helped out in several areas. Now, one of the differences is the price of these things. The RB1 is just a $25 chassis that I bought from Chris Tandy, and I've loved that rig. It does things that others can't. It has a better center of gravity than anything else I own, and that's not necessarily only due to the chassis. It's also due to the fact that I just hit a good combination of everything. Now, the Mofo version 4 is great because it's got everything. It's got portals, it's got a lightweight motor, it has, both of them have high clearance links, and it has a ton of brass up front. It has the 9 gram Mofo steering links. And the brass portals really, I mean, they planted it. They keep the thing on the ground, and it will not tip when you think it will tip. So a couple of times during tonight's test, it surprised me that it didn't. But that's how stable this thing is, and it's due to the fact that you got all that brass down low. I have nothing bad to say about the Mofo portals, and that is adding brass right down where you need it, and it's a good chunk of brass too. They're a little spendy, but you only have to buy them once, and then you can build something like that, and I really enjoy it. This used to be my Alpha 5 that you saw get unfortunately destroyed out at Red Rock trying to do the wall, and I felt like that was a shame that happened. But if it hadn't happened, I would not have rebuilt my my version 4, and now these are my 2 best rigs as far as capability goes. But just because you don't have a lot of ground clearance doesn't mean that it can't go where a big ground clearance truck can go. There's going to be a few places where it can't, but when you have a low CG rig, that's going to be able to climb a little steeper than a high articulation, high ground clearance rig. The RB1 is my steepest climbing truck at the moment, and I believe, yeah, it would be. It would be. Everything else that is in its weight category has big tires on it. The version 3 bouncer, I do keep big tires on, and some long wheelbase rigs that I have big tires. But for a regular truck, I go with small tires now. It just seems to work out better. Well, that's all for tonight. I know the video got kind of long, but I haven't done one in a while, and thought we'd just have a little fun tonight, talk about some things, and I hope it helped in some way. We'll talk to you later. I'll see you in the next video.